The alarm tore through the training deck before I even had time to raise my hands. Red light, screaming metal. The floor shook under my boots as the simulation walls cracked open into something that was not a simulation anymore. My name is Laura Bennett, and in that moment, I was still the girl everyone on this station called Powerless. I had heard that word so many times, it no longer stung the way it used to. Powerless, said with a smirk, said with pity. Said by cadets from 6 different worlds who could bend fire, read minds, or turn their skin into living armor. And me, standing among them, with nothing but 2 hands and a heartbeat, and a strange faded mark on the side of my neck that nobody could explain. The instructors said it was a birth scar. The medics said it was nothing, just skin, just a smudge of old pigment shaped like a small circle with 3 thin lines crossing through it. I had stopped asking questions about it years ago. It never did anything. It never glowed, never burned, never mattered. Until that night. The ambush came from the lower cargo section, where the station's outer hull had been struck by something the sensors never caught coming. I was on a routine night patrol, the kind of duty they gave to cadets who could not be trusted with anything more important. Powerless cadets did not get assigned to defense. We got assigned to walking hallways and checking doors. I was checking a door when the wall exploded inward. Smoke rolled across the corridor. Emergency lights flickered from white to red. Through the haze, I saw shapes moving. Fast, low, mechanical. Not station security. Not any species registered on this ship. Raiders. The kind of raiders that hit remote training outposts because they knew the cadets stationed there were unarmed and unprepared. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering, and watched 3 of them stride past the broken doorway, carrying weapons that hummed with a sound I had never heard before. I should have run. Every instinct told me to run. Instead, I thought of Priya. Priya Sharma was the only other person on this station who had ever treated me like I belonged here. She was gifted, powerfully so, able to shape small storms of static electricity with her hands, and she still chose to sit with me at meals when no one else would. She was on watch duty in the observation deck tonight, directly in the path the raiders were taking. I moved before I finished deciding to move. The corridor bent left toward the observation deck, and I ran through smoke that stung my eyes and made my lungs ache. I heard voices ahead, Priya's voice, sharp and afraid, followed by a sound like sparks hitting metal, and then silence that scared me more than any noise could have. I reached the observation deck to find her on the floor, one hand pressed against a wound on her shoulder, 3 raiders standing over her with weapons raised. They were tall, armored in dull gray plating, faces hidden behind visors that reflected the red emergency light like dead eyes. I did not have a weapon. I did not have a gift. I had nothing except my own body between them and her. So I used it. I threw myself forward and shoved the nearest raider off balance, just enough to knock the barrel of his weapon away from Priya's head. He turned on me with surprising speed, and I felt a burst of pain across my shoulder as something struck me, hard enough to throw me back against the wall. That was when the mark on my neck began to burn. It did not feel like fire, not exactly. It felt like a pressure building beneath my skin, tight and hot, spreading from the small circle mark down through my chest and out along my arms. My vision sharpened. Sound became clearer, sharper, as if a fog I never knew was there had lifted from my mind. The raider raised his weapon again, and this time, I saw it coming before he even finished moving. Not because I was fast. Because everything around me had slowed down, as if time itself had decided to give me a moment longer than it gave everyone else. I stepped aside. His shot missed and scorched the wall where I had been standing a heartbeat before. I did not understand what was happening to me. I only knew that my body was moving with a certainty it had never had before, my hands finding the raider's wrist and turning it, my legs finding balance I had never trained hard enough to earn. The mark on my neck pulsed with heat, and every pulse gave me something new: speed, strength, a strange awareness of the room around me that let me sense where the second raider was, before he even stepped into view. I heard Priya gasp my name. I did not answer. I could not spare the breath. The second raider swung a heavy weapon toward my head. I caught his arm, and for the first time in my life, I felt strong, truly strong. strong enough to redirect his swing into the wall beside us. Sparks flew. He staggered. I did not stop to think about how strange this was. I only thought about getting Priya out of that room alive. The third raider finally raised his weapon toward me directly, and I felt something inside my chest answer his aim, like an alarm going off. The mark burned hotter than before, a bright, searing warmth that did not hurt so much as it demanded. I threw myself sideways as his shot cut through the space where I had been. I did not know how I was still standing. I did not know how I was still moving, but somewhere beneath the fear, a small, clear thought rose up inside me. This is what I am. This is what has always been sleeping inside me. The fight did not last long after that. It felt long, every second stretched thin and sharp, but when I look back now, I know it could only have been a minute or two before station security finally reached the observation deck, and the raiders retreated through the same breach they came from, dragging one wounded companion between them. The moment they were gone, the burning in my neck faded, and my legs nearly gave out beneath me. I caught the edge of a console and stayed upright through sheer stubbornness, breathing hard, my whole body shaking with the sudden absence of whatever had carried me through the last few minutes. Priya was staring at me with wide eyes, one hand still pressed to her wounded shoulder. "You did that," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Laura, you did that with your bare hands." I did not have an answer for her. I did not have an answer for myself. The rest of that night blurred together in fragments. Medics arriving, security officers asking questions I could not fully answer, Priya insisting through gritted teeth that I had saved her life, over and over, until the officers finally believed her instead of assuming I had simply gotten lucky. By morning, word had spread across the entire station. I sat in the medical bay, while a doctor examined the mark on my neck with instruments I had never seen used on me before, scanning devices that hummed and blinked and produced readings that made her frown in confusion. She called in a second doctor, then a third. Then, finally, someone from the science division who introduced himself as Dr. Elias Whitfield, a tall, quiet man with gray eyes and a calm voice that did not match the tension in his shoulders. He studied the scan results for a long moment before he spoke. "This is not a birthmark," he said. "This is a dormant marker. Biological, but layered with something else, something old. I have only seen references to this in restricted historical files. Records from the earliest days of human contact with the wider galaxy." I asked him what that meant. He hesitated before answering, choosing his words carefully. "It means, Laura, that your people were never actually without gifts. You were simply built differently. Every other species we know manifests power early, openly, predictably. Humans do not. Human gifts, when they exist at all, remain sealed away, hidden behind something like a lock. They only open under conditions almost no one can safely create. Extreme danger, extreme need, a threat to someone you are willing to protect at any cost. That is why so few humans in the coalition ever show power," he continued. "Not because you lack it, because the circumstances required to unlock it are rare and dangerous, and most people who might have triggered it never survive long enough to explain what happened to them afterward." I sat there trying to absorb what he was telling me. My entire life, I had been told I was less than everyone around me. Weaker, slower, a liability. And now this quiet man with gray eyes was telling me that the truth had simply been buried too deep for anyone to see it, including me. Word of the attack, and what I had done during it, spread through the station faster than I expected. By the time I left the medical bay, cadets who had never once looked in my direction were watching me in the hallways, whispering, some with open curiosity, a few with the same suspicion they might show a strange new species instead of a fellow cadet. Not everyone believed the reports. A senior cadet named Victor Callahan, who had mocked me more than once during training exercises, cornered me outside the mess hall 2 days later, arms crossed, a skeptical look on his face. "I heard the story," he said. "Powerless girl fights off 3 armed raiders with her bare hands. Forgive me if I find that difficult to believe." I did not feel like defending myself to him. I only shrugged and told him he was welcome to ask Priya himself, since she had been standing right there. He studied me for a long moment, clearly searching for some sign that I was lying, some crack in my expression that would let him dismiss the whole story as an exaggeration. He did not find one. Eventually he walked away without another word, though I noticed he did not look at me with quite the same smirk after that. The following week, the station commander called a full assembly. I stood near the back, uncomfortable with the attention, as she addressed the entire training class about the attack, about station security failures, about new protocols that would be put in place to prevent another breach. Near the end of her address, she paused and looked directly at me. "Cadet Bennett," she said, "would you step forward?" My stomach twisted, but I obeyed, walking to the front of the assembly hall while every eye in the room followed me. The commander, a stern woman named Colonel Diane Marsh, studied me for a moment before speaking again. 3 nights ago, this cadet, unarmed and untrained in combat, engaged 3 heavily armed raiders in close quarters and successfully protected a wounded fellow cadet until security arrived. I want every person in this room to understand what that means. It means the standards we have used to judge human potential in this coalition have been wrong from the very beginning. A murmur ran through the crowd. I felt my face heat up, unused to being the center of anything except ridicule. The colonel continued, her voice steady and clear. "We do not yet understand the full nature of what happened that night. Dr. Whitfield and his team will be studying it further, with Cadet Bennett's full consent, but effective immediately, she will be reassigned to advanced combat training, alongside the rest of you, no longer excluded from exercises she was previously barred from." I did not know what to say. I only nodded, and the assembly moved on to other business. But I could feel something shifting in the room, something that had nothing to do with words, and everything to do with the way people were suddenly looking at me differently. Over the following weeks, my life on the station changed in ways I never expected. I was allowed into training sessions I had been barred from for years. Instructors who once dismissed me with barely a glance now studied my every move with genuine interest, trying to understand what conditions might trigger the mark on my neck again, and whether I could learn to summon that strength without waiting for another life-threatening emergency. It was not easy. Dr. Whitfield explained that the ability seemed tied directly to extreme stress, combined with a will to protect someone else, and no amount of controlled testing in a safe environment managed to trigger even the faintest response from the mark. It remained cold, silent, ordinary-looking skin, no matter how hard the science team tried to provoke it. I will admit, there were nights I wondered if that first time had been some strange accident that would never happen again. A single burst of desperate strength I would never be able to reach a second time. The thought scared me more than I wanted to admit. I had spent so long being told I was powerless that a part of me still expected to wake up one day and discover it was true after all. Priya, recovering steadily from her wound, refused to let me sink into that kind of doubt. She sat with me during long evenings in the mess hall, reminding me over and over that whatever had happened that night was real, that she had seen it with her own eyes, that no accident could explain the way I had moved, the way I had sensed danger before it arrived, the way I had stood between her and 3 armed raiders without a single moment of hesitation. "It is not about whether you can do it again on command," she told me one night, her storm gift crackling faintly around her fingers out of habit as she spoke. "It is about knowing it is there, knowing that when it matters most, you will not be standing there with nothing. None of us fully understand our gifts either, Laura. We just trust that they are part of us." Her words stayed with me longer than I expected. 2 months after the attack, another emergency arose, though this one was far less dramatic than the raider assault. A malfunction in the station's lower reactor core triggered a containment breach warning, and every cadet was mobilized to help with evacuation procedures while the engineering team worked to stabilize the system. I was assigned to help guide younger trainees through the smoke-filled corridors toward the escape pods. It was tense work, but nothing compared to the raid, until I discovered a group of 3 younger cadets trapped behind a jammed door in a section flooding with heat from a ruptured coolant line. I did not feel the mark begin to burn slowly this time. It happened almost the moment I registered how much danger those 3 trainees were in, how close the rising heat was to becoming lethal if I did not get that door open in time. The warmth spread from my neck down through my chest again, faster this time, sharper, and I found myself gripping the edges of that jammed door with a strength I still could not fully explain. pulling it open, using nothing but raw effort, until the metal groaned and gave way just enough for the trainees to scramble through. I got them clear seconds before an emergency bulkhead sealed that section entirely. Standing there afterward, breathing hard, watching the mark's warmth fade from my skin once more, I understood something Priya had been trying to tell me all along. It was there. It had always been there. I did not need a perfect explanation of how or why. I only needed to trust that when someone needed me, it would answer. News of the reactor incident spread quickly, and this time there was no skepticism left among the cadets. Even Victor Callahan approached me afterward, offering a stiff but sincere nod of respect before walking away without a word. It was not an apology, not exactly, but from him, it was close enough. Dr. Whitfield's research team continued studying the pattern, comparing notes from both incidents, slowly building a theory that human gifts across the coalition might follow a similar hidden structure, waiting silently beneath the surface for the right combination of danger and purpose to call them forward. He told me, during one of our long debrief sessions, that my case was already being shared quietly among other stations, that other human cadets who had once been dismissed as ungifted were being re-examined, tested more carefully, watched more closely during emergencies, rather than simply written off in advance. I found myself thinking often about all those other cadets, scattered across different outposts, carrying their own quiet marks, their own sealed potential, waiting for a moment none of them could predict or control. I wondered how many of them would ever get the chance to discover what they were truly capable of, and how many might live their entire lives believing the same lie I once believed about myself. The word powerless still followed me sometimes, muttered by cadets from other outposts who had not yet heard the full story, but it no longer carried the weight it once did. I had stopped flinching from it. I had stopped believing it defined me. On the final evening before my transfer to advanced training became official, I stood alone on the observation deck where everything had started, looking out at the stars scattered endlessly beyond the reinforced glass. Priya joined me quietly, leaning against the railing beside me without a word for a long moment. "Do you regret it?" she finally asked. "Finding out what you really are, the hard way, in the middle of an attack, instead of some safe, controlled test?" I thought about the question honestly before answering. "No," I told her. "I do not think I would have believed it any other way. I needed to feel it happen, not just be told about it." She smiled faintly and looked back out at the stars. "Then I suppose the raiders did us both a strange kind of favor," she said. I almost laughed at that, surprised by how true it felt despite everything. I reached up and touched the mark on my neck, still and cold now, ordinary-looking skin once again, giving no outward sign of what it held sleeping beneath the surface. I no longer needed it to glow constantly to know it was real. I no longer needed proof beyond what I had already lived through twice now, in two separate moments when everything depended on it. They called me powerless once, and for a long time, I believed them, because I had never been given a reason to believe anything else. But power, I have learned, does not always look the way everyone expects it to look. Sometimes it hides quietly beneath the surface for years, unseen, unmeasured, dismissed by everyone including the person carrying it, waiting patiently for the one moment when it is needed most. I do not know when the mark will burn again. I do not know what danger will call it forward next time, or who I will be standing beside when it does. But I know now, without any doubt left in my mind, that when that moment comes, I will not be standing there with nothing. I never was.